So, I want to talk about this little habit, something you probably do all the time without even realizing it. It's this two-word phrase we use as a shield, a tool, and honestly, sometimes just as a pure reflex. You know what I'm talking about. I'm sorry. You've said it, I've said it, we've all probably said it like 10 times already today. But here's the crazy part. What if I told you that most of the time you say it, you don't actually mean it? At least, not in the way you think you do. I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You're walking through your own house, you accidentally bump into a chair, and what's the first thing you say? Oh, sorry, to an inanimate object. So have you ever stopped to wonder why? Why do you do that? Or why do you apologize to a waiter when they're the one who messed up your order? If I'm sorry is just your go-to response for, well, everything, there's a really fascinating reason why. And here it is. This is the big reveal, and it's a game changer. This habit isn't really about being polite. It's not a personality quirk. It's a deep-seated psychological strategy you learn to keep yourself feeling safe. Yeah, you heard that right. In the world of psychology, this is seen as an incredibly sophisticated survival tactic. It's something you learn to do, not something you were born with. Basically, what this means is that over-apologizing is this clever little trick you learned to handle a world that felt, well, a bit chaotic or emotionally unsafe. You learn that saying sorry could diffuse tension and make things feel more stable and predictable. Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. Not all sorries are created equal. It turns out there are actually three main psychological profiles behind this habit. Let's dig in and see which one, if any, feels familiar to you. So, we're going to break down the human lie detector, the ignored child, and the numb survivor. And trust me, getting a handle on which one you might be, it can change everything. All right, let's kick things off with type 1, the human lie detector. And you know, this one's probably the most common one out there. Just listen to that. Other people's bad moods feel like your personal responsibility. Wow. If that just hit you in the gut, there's a good chance you fall into this category. You feel this constant, almost compulsive need to manage the feelings of everyone around you. See, your brain is basically a supercomputer that's always on, constantly scanning the room for emotional data. You notice the tiniest shift in someone's tone, a subtle change in their body language. And your "I'm sorry" it's not an admission of guilt. It's a fire extinguisher you use to put out any potential emotional fires. But man, carrying that around all day, it's completely draining. Okay, let's shift gears to type 2. And this one goes a bit deeper into our pasts. Let's talk about the ignored child. This phrase just says it all, doesn't it? A room that didn't echo. We tend to think of trauma as these big, loud, dramatic events, but for this type, the real wound wasn't about what happened, it was about everything that never happened. It was the quiet, the silence, the emotional void. So if you learned early on that just having basic needs, like needing attention or help or a glass of water, made you a burden, you figured out how to make yourself small. You apologize for simply existing. So when you say, "I'm sorry," what you're often really saying is, please, please don't be mad that I'm even here. And that brings us to our third and final type, the numb survivor. And I want to be really clear here. This type is anything but weak. They are incredibly, incredibly strong. And this metaphor of heavy armor, it is perfect. For this person, "I'm sorry" isn't a white flag of surrender. No way. It's a shield. It's a piece of defensive armor they had to build piece by piece to protect themselves from years of conflict. This is someone who learned that any little mistake could set off a landmine, so their entire nervous system got hardwired for survival. They apologize before anything even happens to disarm a potential threat. Their mind is constantly running simulations, mapping out worst-case scenarios and all the exits. And that apology, it's just the quickest, most effective escape route they found. Okay, so if any of this is ringing a bell, maybe a little too loudly, I need you to lean in and listen really closely to this next part, because this is the most important piece of the whole puzzle. It's time to completely reframe how you think about this. Let me say that again so it really sinks in. Over-apologizing is not a character flaw. It does not mean you're weak. It does not mean you're broken. In fact, it's the total opposite. It's a sign that you are incredibly resilient and adaptive. You figured out how to survive in a tough environment. You learned a very sophisticated skill. That's a superpower, not a weakness. But, and it's a really big but, that superpower comes at a cost. It's like having an app running in the background of your phone 24/7. You don't always notice it, but it is quietly draining your battery every single day. So, what do we do with all this information? Well, that brings us to our final and maybe most empowering point. It's about what comes next. Just understanding where this behavior comes from, that's the key that unlocks the door. That survival skill, it did its job. It kept you safe when you needed it. But now, you might not need it anymore. You have permission to exist. You are allowed to have needs. You are allowed to take up your rightful space in the world without apologizing for it. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. The human lie detector, the ignored child, or the numb survivor? Which one are you? Because figuring that out, that is the very first step to reclaiming your energy and your space.